Hello everyone, this is Jag Panesar and this is a recording of the 20 presentation, Decoding Your Audience for Better Marketing Results, the Power of DiSC. So let's get straight into it. Have you ever had a scenario where you're just feeling really frustrated with trying to get a message across, but you're just not able to get it across? No matter what it is that you say, the person that you're speaking to just isn't getting what it is that you're trying to say. Well, the answer to that might be in DiSC. Now, in the next 20 minutes, you'll learn what DiSC is, how it works, and how to apply it to your marketing to understand your audience better so that you can create more targeted messages, improve engagement with your marketing, and create stronger connections. Now, before I go into that, what I want to do is I want to talk about Solar 7. Solar 7 is a model that we've created, and it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just about the process that you go through in marketing to get to return on investment. So stage one is discovery. That's all about understanding the organization, where it's been, where it is now, and where it wants to go, and understanding the target audience in more detail, understanding the goals, and understanding the competition. Once you've understood that, then it's about forming the strategy. The strategy captures all activity that needs to take place, and that's what the grey dotted lines around the outer perimeter represent. The outcome from the strategy should be thorough research showing the things that need to happen. So for example, it should say, right, from everything that we've learned, in January you need to do this, February you need to do that, March you need to do this, and so on and so on. Stage 3 is at the heart of the model, and that's your brand and your content. Your brand is so much more than just a logo. It's your positioning. It's how you make people feel. It's what you stand for. It's your purpose. And that should feed through into your messaging and your content. Stage 4 is the website, and that's like the sun in your solar marketing system. And that messaging should feed through to the website. And then stage 5 are what we call the planet. And these are all the different ways that orbit your website, that drive traffic to your website. So that can be being found on Google through search engine optimization or pay-per-click, through social media, through email, through marketing, through advertising, or through PR. And the orange ring around each one also says content. Just as content is at the heart of the model, content is key to each of the channels. The example I always use is that you could be posting on social media all day, every day. But if it isn't aligned with your audience and the messaging isn't speaking to their pain points, it doesn't mean anything. So content is key to every channel. The orange arrows represent all of these channels working together as much as possible in as many audience relevant places as possible. And ultimately, that's what's going to drive the right kind of traffic to your site for you to get inquiries. Stage 6 is review and measure. That's basically looking at the analytics, looking at the data, fine-tuning the good stuff, getting rid of the bad stuff. And that's what ultimately is going to lead you to your return on investment. So this is the bigger picture of everything that we do. Today, we're talking about DiSC to understand your audience better. So that links straight into the heart of the model, stage 3. So in order to get your branding right, you need to understand the people. So that's what we're going to do. So let's move on to talking about DiSC. What is DiSC? Here's a definition: a behavioural assessment tool used to understand how people behave and make decisions in different situations. Now, this is a tool that's used by a lot of coaches and management consultants to help people understand their teams better and help manage teams better and help communications and efficiencies work better between people. And that's how I was introduced to it. I was introduced to it by my business coach about 10 years ago. So let's talk about it a little bit more. There's 4 key measures here: dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. So that's what that's where the DiSC elements come from. DISC: dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. Now, the way that a DiSC profile works is you would answer a questionnaire, you would answer a series of questions, and the output from those questions would give you one of 4 profiles. It would say, right, this is your dominant natural behavioral profile. So let's go through each one. Let's talk about D. So this is the circle, and I'll talk a little bit more about kind of how it works shortly. But let's talk about each profile first. So dominance, the general traits of someone with a dominant profile is they tend to be direct, results orientated, quite firm, strong-willed, and forceful, or they can come across in this way. These are not just, it's not just limited to this. These are just 5 bullet points. There's a lot of, it's very complex because there are positives and negatives to every profile, as there is in everything in life. So they're the key kind of identifiers for someone with a dominant behavioral profile. Influence. Someone that has a dominant influence profile tends to be outgoing, enthusiastic, optimistic, high-spirited, and lively. Let's move on to conscientious. People with these behavioral traits tend to be analytical, reserved, precise, private, and systematic. And then finally, steadiness. People in the S profile tend to be even-tempered, accommodating, patient, humble, and tactful. Now, when you do the test, what happens is the report will be output, and you will get it will give you a report, and it will place a dot for where your behavioral profile sits. Now, let's talk about my profile. I did this test about 10 years ago, and my dot came in. I came in as a low-level ID. So what does that mean? It means that I am not as inclined to, I am primarily I, but I'm not as inclined as someone whose dot might come out really far towards a perimeter, the outer perimeter. It means, like I say, I'm dominant in the I profile, a little bit of D, but what it also means is I have the ability, with not too much work, having to think about it too hard, is I can go into the C profile or the S profile quite easily. So it means I've got a fair bit of flexibility. Now, let's talk about somebody else's profile as an example of how this might work. So Simon is our head of operations at Xpand. His profile, he's an S profile. He's quite close to the C. So he's actually quite far away from me. He's a very reserved person. He thinks things out very, very well. And takes his time to kind of really think. And when he talks about something, when he says something, he says it to count. Whereas someone like me, who's an I, very optimistic, very talkative person, I'll kind of always be really optimistic about stuff. And in a team environment, you can see straight away we've got two opposite ends of we're almost at two opposite ends of the perspective. And when I know when I need something doing in detail or something looking at very carefully, that's the job that is perfect for Simon. Whereas, for example, if it's a scenario where something needs presenting, for example, like this presentation, that's the kind of thing that is much more naturally in my arena. And that's how we work really well as a team together. Because that's a perfect example, really. So that kind of shows from a team perspective, as soon as we understand each other's stressors and motivators, we can actually understand how to communicate better with each other. And when you get your report, it will actually show you stressors and motivators. Let's have a look at a broader view of it. Now, if you look at kind of the horizontal and the vertical axis, you can see on the vertical axis, at the top it says outgoing, and at the bottom it says reserved. And on the right-hand side, it says it's more people are more people-orientated, and on the left, people are more task-orientated. So your Ds and your Cs might come across as a little bit colder and less sociable and less human orientated, less people-orientated. Whereas your I and your S profile people, they will think more about the person and more about the relationship. And then likewise, when your D and your I profiles might seem to be more outgoing, and your C and your S profiles might be a bit more reserved and come across maybe a bit more introverted. And this is generally, again, when you look at them and split it into these kind of broader halves, this is another element that kind of depicts the characteristics. But a really important thing before we go any further is DiSC describes behavioral tendencies, not personality boxes. This is not pigeonholing people. Everyone has elements of all styles. There is no best style. That is so important to get across because every style has its strengths and weaknesses. So, I've told you a little bit about what DiSC is and how it works. So, let's play a game. Now, this is a recording of the presentation that I did at the event, so I'm not able to get the interaction, but I'm going to talk through it. And if you're watching this, play along. I'll give you a few seconds to kind of maybe to have a think about where you feel each profile should sit. So, let's talk about Donald Trump, one of the most controversial and sadly famous people in the world. I'm not a fan of him, I'm not ashamed to admit. So where would you think Donald Trump would fit out of the 4 characteristics that we've just described? If you were to say dominance, you'd be right. I mean, it's kind of easy to spot, really. He's a very dominant guy. He's straight to the point. He doesn't really deal with the detail. And yeah, dominant. He is Mr. Dominant. Okay, let's have a look at Bill Gates. Where do we feel that Bill Gates sits? It's on the C profile. Very conscientious. He's a very technically minded person, so that lends quite well to, he created Windows. And off the back of that, he's obviously got a real attention to detail. Okay, next one, Richard Branson. Richard Branson, he fits into the influence category. Very outgoing, very optimistic guy, really lovely, very smiley guy. A lot of people like him. He's always out there, winning people over. He fits into the I profile. Okay, let's talk about Oprah Winfrey. Where does she fit? She also fits into the I profile. Also very people orientated. She was a chat show host and, very, very much all about the people. The next one, Mahatma Gandhi. Where would you say he falls? This one caught me out a little bit. He falls into the S profile. Very steady, very carefully thought through, very philosophical in the way he does stuff. So it goes to show, Mahatma Gandhi was a world leader. It doesn't mean just because, you fit into the S or the C profile, if you're not these outgoing D or I profiles, it doesn't mean you can't be, someone that has such a massive impact on the world as the likes of Mahatma Gandhi and Bill Gates. Okay, next one. Simon Cowell. I think that's kind of an easy one. D profile. Very blunt, very to the point. And then the next, David Beckham. This one caught me out a little bit as well. He actually falls into the S profile. Again, very reserved, very calm. He made captain of the England team, and there would have been qualities within him that was obviously respected amongst his teammates. And then finally, I know this isn't real. I'm a bit of a nerd. I'm a bit of a sci-fi nerd. Spock. I think we could probably all agree, anyone who knows anything about Star Trek, that Spock falls into the C profile. So that should give you a bit of an outline and hopefully put a bit of put a few faces to the categories in terms of names and faces that we know. So applying DiSC to understand your audience. Understanding the likely dominant DiSC styles within your target audience can inform your marketing and communication strategies. So already we've talked about famous people that we know of, and we're aware that they'll all have different behavioral styles. So they're likely to respond to different types of messaging. So let's talk in a little bit more detail. So the D style, what do you want to do? You want to focus on things like, in your communications, in your messaging, you want to focus on things like results, direct benefits, efficiency, clear calls to action. You want to use strong, confident language. If you have an audience that is primarily D, use a strong, confident language. Okay, the I profile. What you want to focus on is social aspects, positive experiences, enthusiasm, and building relationships. If you remember, your I's and your S profiles are much more people orientated. So you want to be using engaging visuals and testimonials. Again, they're probably much more inclined to be visual learners. And testimonials, that's proof from other people, going back to the people orientation side of things. And then your S profile, what you want to do with, if your audience are an S profile, focus on reliability and trust and stability and support. You want to use use a calm, reassuring tone and focus on long-term value. And then the C profile, you want to give detailed information, data, logic, evidence. C profiles respond well to factual and analytical information. So you want to kind of really talk to them in their language. And that's really what this is all about. It's language and messaging and talking to the audience in their language. So if you can identify typically what one of these four traits your audience are, you'll be able to define the messaging a little bit more. Speaking of which, let's apply this to different marketing channels. So let's talk about social media. So let's say, for example, you have a ratio of 30% I profile and 70% C profile. Use this ratio in your content for social media. So for example, out of every 10 posts, you might have 30% that are focused on enthusiasm, emotion, and relationship orientation. And then the other 70% might be logic, data, and evidence driven. Now, that isn't the only way that you would split your social media. We have things called your content pillars and different themes. You could intermingle that within these different content pillars and themes, depending on how your audience split works. Email marketing subject headers. Now, when you're sending out email marketing, the subject header is the very first thing that's going to encourage someone to open the email, and then you want them to take that next call to action, whatever it is. So let's say you have an audience with a dominant S or an I profile. So remember the circle that I showed, the DiSC profile circle that I showed you, your I's and your S profiles are much more people orientated. So you want to work along the lines of something that's just maybe less factual and less about the direct results, and something that's a little bit more about building relationships and reassuring and engaging and people orientated. And then on the flip side, if you have an audience with a dominant D or a C profile, sell them the facts and results, right? So, just give hard statistics wherever you can. And again, showing you the circle, the people to the left, the D and the C profile, much more task orientated and results orientated. Website content. Now, there's 3 types of content consumers. You get skimmers, swimmers, and divers. I think it's self-explanatory, but I'll just quickly run through it. Your skimmers just skim stuff, and your divers go into stuff in a lot of depth, and your swimmers sit somewhere in between. So let's have a look at it in relation to DiSC. Your skimmers, your D and your I profiles are people that are not as detail oriented, so they're likely to be skimmers, whereas your divers are your C and your S profiles. They're much more detail orientated people. So, if you have C and S profile as a dominant audience that you're selling to, you want to be giving a lot of detail and taking an analytical approach and making sure you're building that trust. Whereas if it's the other way around, you want to be kind of creating content that's just short and punchy. You're not creating this massive wall of text because your D's and your I's won't read it. Things to watch out for. This is important. Every model, has its flaws, and this is it's behavioural science. It's based around people, and people are all very different. What we're doing here is we're making an educated guess about audience tendencies. Not everybody just fits into one box, so you've got to avoid stereotyping. You can't say, oh yeah, well, they work in sales, so they must be an I profile. No, I know people that work in all kinds of sales roles that fit into various, all different sides of the DiSC profile, and they all bring different strengths to based on their profile. And there are other models available. For example, Myers-Briggs, the one that I've been coached in, is DiSC profiling, hence the reason that's what I'm talking about. So, to conclude, you should now understand how DiSC can be used to get a deeper understanding of your audience so that you can create more targeted messages, improve engagement with your marketing, and create stronger connections. So just to wrap up, I'm going to give you a few resources. If you'd like to message me, I can send you a free online test link. It's there is a paid version that gives you a very detailed outline. I'm not a DiSC practitioner, but there are free versions online, and there is one that I've seen people use, and I've seen the reports. It's a 2-3 page report, and it's pretty good. It's a really interesting subject, so just do the test on yourself and just see what the results come out as. If you want more information on about how Xpand can create audience personas for your business to get marketing results, that's something that we can also talk to you about, because every single thing when we create a marketing strategy, it always starts, as I explained in the Solar 7 model. Once we've got the information, we will look at your brand, and the starting point of that is looking at your audience persona. So that's the thing we can help you on. Another resource, a great book called Surrounded by Idiots by a chap called Thomas Erickson. It uses disc profiling as its foundation, but it kind of uses a bit of a color scheme, a red, yellow, green, and blue color scheme, rather than DISC. But in principle, it's exactly the same thing. Great book, really interesting read. And then also, there's a business coach that I know, lovely guy called Ian Strachan. If you want to know more about how you can use disc profiling, I can introduce you to Ian Strachan, and he can help you apply it to your business and to your team as well. If you have any questions, you can drop me a line. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and drop me a DM, and I would love to talk more about this to you. Thank you for listening, and I hope it's been useful.